over the last 2 days, you've heard our stories. Who we are, what we believe, what we stand for, and what we won't stand for at all. And the truth of the matter is this. Beauty Counter is not a beauty company. Beauty Counter is a movement. Yes, we are. So let's think of all the other great movements in the world, right? What really made them move? How did they take the impossible and make them truly possible? They took passion, courage of commitment, courage to keep going when the easiest thing would be to stop. And quite honestly, they took a lot of time. We humans, we like instant things, snap decisions. But what matters, that takes dedication. Let's talk about the movement to ban smoking on airplanes. The movement to ban smoking on airplanes started with a single petition. It took approximately 10 years to garner widespread attention, and another 21 years to pass legislation. Let's talk about the next one, lead in paint. How many years did it take? 27 years. And look at this ad, okay? These walls don't just look good, they're yummy too. How many of you guys eat your walls? Unreal. But nonetheless, 27 years. How many years do you think it took for women to earn the right to vote? 72 years. I can promise you this. It will not take 72 years to pass further legislation over cosmetics. Speaking of which, let's talk about 1938. You've heard us talk about 1938, a flawed bill, and some of what's come after that. But let's go back and look to the events that led up to 1938, and even how that flawed bill was actually protective at the time. In the 1930s, harmful and questionable chemicals were widely used in food, personal care products, and cosmetics. But that fact was not widely known, or at least not widely known until the Poison Squad. In 1902, a man by the name of Dr. Harvey Wiley, who at the time was the chief chemist of the Department of Agriculture, got 12 courageous, or I would say crazy, men who were leading scholars and top athletes from Ivy League institutions to agree to volunteer to eat 3 meals a day that were poisoned. They had chemicals in them like borax, sulfuric acid, copper sulfate, formaldehyde, and others. Arsenic, I mean, just horrible ingredients. And these men, over a long period of time, ate these meals with poison in them until their bodies literally could not take any more. They were on the verge of death. And through this entire process, the Poison Squad began to give light to a situation that needed to be brought to the eyes of everyone. Let's go forward a little bit later. In the 1933, a woman by the name of Mrs. Brown bought a product called Lash Lure. Okay, now we all know that we all want longer, thicker, darker eyelashes, right? In fact, I bet half of you in here have fake eyelashes on right now. I don't. Mine are so short, it doesn't even matter. But anyway, Mrs. Brown bought this mascara, and what happened over a couple of months was that her corneas began to deteriorate, and within several months, she was totally blind. In that same year, the FDA put together an exhibition. And this exhibition was food and personal care products that had been preserved with toxic chemicals. And the FDA obviously operated very differently in those days because they were the ones that were trained to gain attention on this matter. And one woman who was very important happened to visit this exhibition, and her name was Eleanor Roosevelt. And her husband, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was the president of the United States at the time. And so she went to this exhibition and she called it a chamber of horrors. And this chamber of horrors got people really thinking about what was going into our food and personal care products. But it wasn't until 1937 when a company from Bristol, Tennessee, introduced into the market a product called elixir sulfanilamide. Now, elixir sulfanilamide was a derivative of a product that had already been on the market, which was called sulfanilamide, and that product was perfectly safe to use as a medicine for strep and other minor respiratory sicknesses in the pill or powder format. But they wanted to make it into a liquid, and so they added another ingredient into it, and that ingredient was called diethylene glycol. And diethylene glycol was the same ingredient that they used as antifreeze. And then they decided that they wanted to make the product a raspberry flavor because they wanted to be able to sell it to people and to children. And so they tested this for fragrance and for texture and for taste and for color. But guess what they didn't test this for? They did not test it for toxicity. And so they produced 234 gallons of this, sent over 600 shipments to their salespeople across the country. And within a month, the American Medical Association started getting phone calls and reports of deaths. And within the first month, over 100 people had died, most of them children. And as you can imagine, their mothers were not only despondent with grief, but they were outraged. And so the FDA took 239 inspectors and chemists, and they did the largest man and product hunt in the history of the United States at that time. And this became a huge public issue. It forced the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, to take action in 1938 to create the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act of 1938. And so for a very brief period of time, we actually had health protective laws. But then what happened? What came along right after that? World War II and the manufacturing revolution. Americans became intoxicated with the art of better living through chemistry. And since World War II, we have introduced into commerce over 85,000 chemicals, and more are introduced every single year. And what's shocking is that less than 10% of these chemicals have ever been tested for safety on human health. What's even more shocking, or as shocking to me, is the fact that in this country, and I only know this from our own research, so I cannot speak yet to Canada, but in the United States, we know through our own research, then less than 20% of Americans have any idea that there are harmful or questionable ingredients in the products that they use in their bodies every single day. And only 4% truly understand this. So let's move forward and talk about some of these ingredients that are commonly used. Okay? Because as we know, while many things have changed since 1938, many things still remain the same, right? Looking at that statistics, we know that most people are still unaware of the fact that there are harmful and dangerous chemicals in the ingredients that they put on their bodies every single day. And they also don't know what potential harm these ingredients can cause, because the effects of these ingredients are not necessarily readily apparent. So let's talk about an ingredient that was used often, mercury. Mercury is still allowed to be used as a preservative in mascara. Coal tar, it's A-OK. Formaldehyde, bring it on. Parabens, endocrine-disrupting phthalates, known carcinogens, allergens, and pollutants. They're all said to be safe for use. How can that be? They are said to be safe to use, but we all know that even though they are called safe, they are absolutely not safe. And this, everyone, and I want you to think about this. These ingredients are told to be safe to the US and Canadian population today, but they are not safe. And this is why our movement matters. And things that matter take dedication. But they also take something else. They take other people. So yesterday, you heard me speak of my why, and then my what, right? And then we got to the how, and we talked a little bit about that, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more in a minute. But one of the things that we decided was that in order to take this movement and do truly remarkable work, we needed to do it with people, many people. We needed to mobilize a large group of people. And we're doing that every single day. But that movement of people like you needed to start with someone. The idea started with me, but this movement of all of you started with someone. And so I wanted to take one moment to ask my partner, collaborator, friend, Stephanie Martin, to come up on the stage to thank her for taking that leap of faith early on to build the movement that has become Beauty Counter. So Steph, will you come up on the stage?
I'm not going to make you talking right now.
I'm so glad you're giving her a standing ovation because she absolutely deserves it. If you are not in Stephanie's organization, well, okay, now you're starting to say, if you're in Stephanie's organization, will you please remain standing? Because like PJ and Matt and Brian and Leela, I thought it would be good for you to see the impact you have had, Stephanie, on so very many people's lives, including my own. So thank you for everything. So our movement, it takes people. And it takes people who believe that there are things that are worth fighting for. There are things that are worth losing sleep over. People who are willing to stand up and be agents for change. Ordinary people who are also extraordinary. And the moment that we refuse to blindly accept things as status quo, we have endless possibilities. You are our agents of change. You are the movement. You are the how. And what does it take? I think it takes something that already is living within inside every single one of us. It takes the courage and commitment of our convictions. Which brings me to the next part of this story. What if? I want you to consider what if. I want you to get used to thinking about the possibilities of things. Get used to thinking about possibilities and envision what things could look like. So when you're hesitant about sharing this information with someone, you don't want to hear their skepticism, or a family member is bringing you down because they don't believe in your business, or you're just too scared to hear no one more time, I want you to consider what if. What if Leela had never asked me to go to breakfast? What if I had never watched the film An Inconvenient Truth? What if Brian and Matt and PJ had never invested? What if someone had never asked you to join the business? What if you never asked someone else? You see, the Beauty Counter opportunity is not just one event. It is what if. And what if our efforts force others to change? What if we force other companies through our efforts to make sweeping changes in their businesses? What if we spur on and continue to research and discover more and more and then share it with everyone that we know? So that Congress is forced to take actions because there are millions of voices lending themselves to our movement. How can we force people to connect the dots between what is good for your body and what is bad for your body? What you put on your body matters as much as what you put in your body. How do we help people understand that and understand the environment that is their body and the environment at large and what these chemicals do to their bodies and to the environment? We do that by lending our voices to this movement. What if our progress forces others to progress? As we make things better, we make others better. What if we push on, knowing that we can push through? And what if, just what if we never stop?